Okay, welcome everybody to the awards session and the business meeting. First, we'll start off with Christian.
Hello, everyone. So I'm opening this session in my role as program chair. I hope you're chatting here if you can't hear something I mentioned. Let me just try to share the first part of this. Oh, wait. Of course, we're all Zoom experts now. And also during this course of this conference preparation, we had to become Zoom experts. So you should now see my screen that says, I want to see the chat again. I don't see that, how to do that. Okay, here's the chat. I want to first present the best paper awards with a lot of apologies to everybody here because we would sit at a nice banquet otherwise, and we don't have that here now. So we have to do this very remotely. So the best papers here, the awards, first go to Michal Dori and Merav Parter of the Technion and the Weizmann Institute, respectively, for exponentially faster, shortest paths in the congested click. Congratulations. I'm not sure if they want to say something here because this part here really does not work so well. So I have just to open this when they wanted to say something here. Just to open this part, let me share some of the inside details from the program committee. That reviewers said this task is central to our understanding of the power of the congested click and the related models, that there were novel technical ideas and a strong technical contribution in this paper, that the paper was well written, the contribution is nice, and that compared to the prior work, this certainly requires new ideas to obtain the sub-logarithmic time shortest path algorithms. And also one snippet that I found here, the reviews are much longer. Of course, the paper makes a significant contribution to some of the most fundamental problems in distributed graph algorithms. Okay, congratulations again. I would like to, in order to turn over here, can we just enable them to speak maybe? How do I do that? I can go to participants and I can unmute Michal. No, this was not. Okay, I'm trying.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, here's Michal.
Thanks a lot. We are still excited despite the...
Yeah, despite, okay. Great. The record is set for this in the proceedings, yeah? The physical token will have to wait, I'm afraid, yeah? So let me again go over to the... Or anything you wanted to mention about the way this paper came together?
Can you repeat the question?
Where you wanted, maybe can you say something about how this paper came together?
I think it started with Karen visiting me at Weizmann, and we talked about the recent paper, the last paper in PODC of last year, and then we talked with Michal, and I think it took about at least a year of discussions until we realized how we should do this stuff. So yeah,
okay.
it was not like a 2 week of a paper. It was more like an ongoing research for quite a while.
Great, thank you. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good model.
Yeah.
Visiting people also physically or and continuing the discussion remotely as well. Good. So let me go on then to the Best Student Paper Award. And let me mention that before I say that, this best paper is viewed strictly better than the best student paper, because otherwise this would have been the best student paper here. Okay, the Best Student Paper Award goes to Salil Docket of the University of Texas at Dallas, and of course to some extent also to the advisor Neeraj Mittal for an adaptive approach to recoverable mutual exclusion. And you have seen this paper yesterday, actually also in the first session. Praise for this paper here. Reviewers found the ideas are new and interesting, that this is nice to see a synchronization algorithm that is adaptive to something other than contention. The result is based on a clever idea, and I have to cut here because the idea goes, the description of the reviewer of the idea goes on for a whole paragraph. Then the other bullet here for all the previous RME algorithms are either non-adaptive to the number of failures with worst case RMR complexity of order log n divided log n at best, or have unbounded worst case RMR complexity. So this is a nice contribution. Congratulations to you as well, to both of you. I think you're there as well to say something. Over to, you want to say something about how this paper came together? Neeraj, or?
So I'd like to thank the PODC program committee for this recognition. Of course, it's highly encouraging for the student for his work to be recognized. And we started working on this 1.5 years ago, well, almost 2 years ago, and it took almost a year of work and then a few months of writing for this work to reach its current form.
Okay, Sahil, can we see you?
Yeah, I was trying to unmute myself. I just wanted to thank my advisor, Dr. Neeraj Mittal, and the PODC committee for giving me this opportunity. I've seen a lot of revisions to my work, and a lot of them does not go into the conference, whatever happens behind the scenes. And I'm just glad that we are able to have this work in a very good shape right now.
Great, thank you. Congratulations again. And also your words could be something that I would tell my students. It's normal that you revise your work many times before it can appears, and it's normal that it takes 1.5 years and a visit and many interactions for something to mature. So take the time, to mature. It can become so that it can get the recognition it deserves. Okay, that closes my part of my current part of this meeting. I'm stopping the sharing and I'm turning back to Jennifer, who will lead through the later parts, and I will return later.
Okay, so next we're going to have Hagit Attia present the Dijkstra Prize.
Yes, so hi, I don't see myself. I'm still new to this Zoom thing. So I'm truly delighted to be presenting the Dijkstra Prize in distributed computing. And this year the prize, and any year, is awarded for outstanding papers on the principles of distributed computing, whose significance and impact on the theory or practice of distributed computing have been evident for at least a decade. The prize is sponsored jointly by ACM PODC and the ETAX DISC. And this year's prize is awarded to Dana Angwin, Jim Aspness, Zoe Diamandi, Michael Fisher, and Rene Perlata for their paper Computation in Networks of Passively Mobile Finite State Sensors. And the paper has appeared in Distributed Computing, and it's the basically the special issue of papers from PODC 2004. So it's actually the first time the Dijkstra Award is given to a paper from the current century, all awards, prior awards were given to papers from the previous century. This seminal paper introduces and initiates the study of population protocols consisting of agents whose resources are limited to a very small amount of memory and computation power. While being one of the simplest models of distributed computing, it still allows to compute non-trivial predicates on the inputs of the agents. Any predicate definable in Pressburger arithmetic can be computed by a population protocol. The paper initiated a new subfield in distributed computing with many algorithmic and lower bound techniques for fundamental tasks. It led to extensive follow-up work regarding the computation power of population protocols, their costs, and their application in dynamic networks, and most interestingly, their usage in chemical and biological systems. The paper paved the way to investigating bounds for the computation of specific fundamental predicates such as majority, plurality, or leader election. In the spirit of current events, some of these protocols relied on epidemic information propagation. They use tools at the boundary between distributed computing, randomized algorithms, and probability theory. In addition, the paper was one of the first to study computation in a dynamic network whose topology is highly variable and generally unpredictable. As I mentioned before, population protocols also had significant impact outside the traditional boundaries of distributed computing. They have been shown to be equivalent to classical chemical reaction networks, which led to significant progress in this area. They also had impact in the context of DNA computing, where population protocols are used to express molecular programs in synthetic DNA. The pioneer work on population protocols introduced in this paper is awarded the 2020 Dijkstra Award in Dijkstra Prize Distributed Computing for providing general and elegant concept for creating a new subfield in distributed computing and for having an impact outside the distributed computing area. I would like to thank the prize committee for their work, myself, Christian Kashan, Rashid Garawi, Nancy Lynch, Yoram Moses, Paul Spirakis, and Alex Schwartzman. I also want to thank all the nominators for all the candidate papers. It's a lot of work and it often goes unnoticed. And I think these people deserve our thanks. And finally, last but of course not least, our colleagues, Dana, Jim, Zoe, Mike, and Renee for winning the Dijkstra Award. And I note that tomorrow, virtual morning, Jim will be giving a keynote talk about population protocols. So I'll stop sharing. And I think I saw almost all authors of the paper present. So I think I cannot unmute them, but you may want Jennifer to
They're all unmuted.
Yeah, alphabetically maybe.
Alphabetical, okay.
Yeah.
Let me begin on this. That I want to give some of the, well, first, my thanks to the awards committee for selecting us. It's a great honor to receive this award at this time. As in all papers that lead to future work that was not anticipated, my interest in this kind of distributed model began in the mid-1990s by a talk from Yoav Shoham, where he was looking for essentially a population protocol for consensus. And of course, I had done a lot of work in consensus, so I immediately tried to see just how many states were necessary. And there's quite an elegant and simple 2-bit per agent algorithm to solve consensus in this model. Then I was interested in studying trust in distributed systems, and Zoe and I made simulated a model of trust and presented a paper in Wuhan in 2001 on that trust model. At that point, I got back and was and pestered my colleagues at Yale to look at this new model, because there seemed to be lots of interesting questions that I wasn't able to answer. And fortunately, Jim and Dana and Renee, who were all at Yale at that time, stepped up, picked up the ball and carried it much further than I could possibly have imagined. So thank you to my colleagues for developing this work to the stage that it was worthy of a Dijkstra Prize.
Well, I'll chime in. I hope I'm audible. I've written down what I needed to say because I knew I wasn't going to be able to say it accurately without doing that. So the first comment is that in nearly 50 years of this stuff that I've been doing, I've never quite gotten over my amazement that somebody would actually pay me to do it. I'd like to thank my co-authors. First of all, I'd like to thank the committee who awarded the prize and acknowledge what an honor it is. But I'd like to thank my co-authors and other collaborators more generally for a lot of fun over the years. But mostly I'd like to thank you, the audience, most of whom I have never met before. It's not exactly a meeting, but I'm thanking you for your faith, your courage, and your persistence in the great intellectual adventure of trying to understand computing, an adventure it has been my privilege to be a small part of. Thank you.
I can chime in if you can hear me. This is Zoe Diamati. I think you can hear me. I just first thank you, Dana, for confirming. I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you to the committee for the honor. It's, as usual, I guess, it's unexpected, very unexpected in my case, since I've moved to other parts of the industry as in product management and sort of the applied part of computer science. I also very much want to thank my co-authors, Mike, who got me excited about the idea of populations of agents with very limited computational power and memory and what they can do and what they can't do, and trying to answer a lot of questions back in 96, I want to say 97. And then Jim and Dana and Renette plugging in with all sorts of different ideas. And I just have the fondest memories of my time at Yale from those meetings of us trying to think through all these questions and try to figure out. We knew there was something there, but it's just a lot more questions than answers at that point. It's a wonderful experience. I've been neglectful not to thank also my undergraduate advisor, Paul Spirakis, in Patras, Greece, who was the first person who got me really excited through his lectures in theoretical computer science as an undergraduate a good many decades ago now, and got me on this path of wonderful intellectual curiosity, as Dana said it much better than I can, and wonderful experiences over the years. So thank you for this. It's delightful, very much unexpected, and very much appreciated.
So I suppose I should probably say something as well. Yeah, I want to, again, also thank the committee and all the people who worked to put together the nomination. I've been on these committees myself, and so I know that it's a lot of work, and often that doesn't go appreciated. I also want to thank all the people who've worked in this model over the last 16 years, because paper isn't influential if nobody else picks up the ball and runs with it. And we had no idea when we wrote this paper that anybody would look at it beyond just the first PODC that it appeared in. And I guess I'll be talking about that more tomorrow, so I don't want to Bigfoot my own talk too much right now. But I also want to thank my co-authors, because if it weren't for the group of people that we had putting this together, I don't think this would have gone anywhere. And particularly, for the work that Mike and Zoe did leading up to it, and the work that Dana and Renee did, of trying to get this model to be something a little bit more than that to start off with. That's all I have to say.
So I don't see Renee around, at least, and I don't think she acknowledged she will be there. If I'm missing her, then please raise your hand or him. Okay. So anyway, I think that concludes this part. Thank you. Really, congratulations to the winners. It's the Dijkstra Award Prize is a big deal, I think, for distributed computing. I think it's a big deal for computing in general, and I would like to echo what Dana said about the importance of doing these intellectual pursuits that can lead us anywhere and everywhere.
Great. Thank you all very much for hosting the awards session. I guess if we're done with that, we can move on to the business meeting. So I'll be sharing my slides, and it's I think when I do that, it's hard for me to see the chat. So maybe if one of my co-hosts can just interrupt me verbally if there's something in the chat that I need to know about while I'm running this meeting here. And also, feel free to put comments in the Zulip stream, and then everything from the Zoom chat will be transferred over to the Zulip stream after the meeting. Okay, so let me get this going. Actually, oh, it looks like I can see the chat. Okay. Great. So first, I'd like to start by giving my heartfelt thanks to everybody that has put so much work into making this PODC be successful. So in alphabetical order, Christian as the program committee chair, Roberto, originally we were going to be in Salerno, Italy, and he was the organizing chair, and he did a bunch of work to deal with the hotel so that we can have it there next year, and I'll talk more about that later. Yuval Emek as the general chair has done so much work, especially with the move to the virtual conference, and Eula has organized this new for PODC senior junior meetings. Avery Miller is the treasurer. Shinhao Su started off doing work on having workshops, although when we moved to virtual, we ended up canceling the workshops, but I wanted to acknowledge the work that he'd done. Yuka has done so much work on putting together the PODC Disc YouTube channel that we've been using. Mark Tuttle was always responding to updates that we needed to make to the website, and George Welch took on kind of being the virtuality chair and doing a lot of kind of behind the scenes, kind of like real computer stuff. Okay. So
just
this
make
is
a comment here to interrupt and thank George Welch from my perspective, because he just popped out of nowhere for me, of course, but not for you. I said he was promised a trip to Italy. Now he is running the show for us as a as a practical experimental physicist. He shows our computer scientists how to really run the service. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so here is our agenda, and anything that's not covered here that you want to bring up, of course, will be in the open floor section. So let's see, now I'm going to turn it over to Faith.
Okay, I want to talk about Safe TOC, and both Edith and I are the Safe TOC advocates for PODC. Okay, next slide.
Yes, sorry.
Okay, so Safe TOC is a group of volunteers formed to help prevent and combat harassment in the theory of computing community, and in particular the PODC community. It aims to provide support to people experience harassment in a professional capacity and to try and diffuse the situation if possible. It also tries to provide guidelines for conference organizers to help ensure a safe and welcoming environment for all participants. For example, it advocates the use of author-declared conflict of interest for submissions. A trained Safe TOC advocate is present for the duration of each conference that's part of this, and to support any attendee who's experienced harassment, and also, even if you haven't experienced, but if you've seen it, to contact the Safe TOC advocates to let them know and have them help try and diffuse it. Safe TOC advocates can also be contacted for advice about incidents related to harassment outside of the conference. Okay, next slide.
Can you see it?
Okay, yes. Okay, so PODC is an ACM conference, and it has a bunch of policies against harassment, and under which that we're supposed to abide by, and there are a bunch of bad behaviors which we don't tolerate, and actions is taken if such behavior occurs. So examples of such action is abusive behavior directed at an individual, such as threats, intimidation, or bullying, any racism or homophobia or other behavior that discriminates against a group or class of people, and sexual harassment of any kind, such as unwelcome sexual advances, words or actions of sexual nature, unwanted touching, things like that. And just to, again, to reiterate, if you were involved in or witness any such incident, you should inform the event organizers or the Safe TOC advocates to make sure that that kind of incident doesn't occur and isn't tolerated in our community. Hopefully within the electronic meeting, there is going to well, hopefully there's not, these incidents don't occur. Perhaps it's even less likely to occur in an online meeting, but please be careful about what you say or how you say it, and just it's hard to know whether that if you say something that might be taken the wrong way, it can cause a problem for someone else. So please think carefully about how you phrase things. Okay, I'll turn this over to Jennifer, back to Jennifer.
Okay, thank you, Faith. So next, I want to initiate the discussion of the future PODC venues. So PODC 2021 will be in Salerno, Italy, and it will be organized by Roberto DePrisco, and that's just a postponement from this year. He was able to get the hotel to just let us shift the contract to next year, so there was no financial penalty for not going and using the hotel. We've been approached about co-locating with SPA in 2022. They don't yet have any information about location. Last year at the business meeting, Ashur and Mathieu gave us a proposal for having PODC 2022 in France, and they are willing to postpone that to 2023. So the steering committee would like to get your feedback about what to do. Should we co-locate with SPA in 2022 and then have PODC 2023 in France, or something else? So please let's see. I guess you can either put something in the chat, or if you want to speak, you do the raise hand thingy, and then I can give you permission to speak. So Shai says, can we co-locate in France? Oh, okay, that's an interesting suggestion. I could definitely suggest that to the SPA steering committee. If, yeah.
Of course, the question is SPA then co-organizing PODC as well, or would there be other organizers searched for?
Yeah, it's a good logistical thing. So Hagit points out, though, this would mean like two consecutive years in Europe. Not that she minds. Okay, and then there's an offer from, let's see. So Andrea says co-location in France sounds good. Magnus says we can also organize it or both here in Iceland at some point. And then this is what I was thinking. Yuka says in the back of my mind, will we really have a physical PODC in 2021? Yeah, I don't know.
We would be rich.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But I guess we, at least at this point, oh, and here's definitely what's the word I'm looking for? Saying that Magnus organized a great conference before. It's a lot of excitement about Iceland. Okay, so for Iceland, Magnus, is any particular year or? It's reasonably affordable now. I see. So the suggestion might be to have, well, yeah, I'm not sure what that means. I think we're kind of fixed on Salerno for next year. Otherwise, we would have a problem with the hotel. Oh, unmute everybody. Okay. Let me see if I can do that. Yuval, is there some global way I can do that? Oh, it's the way this session was set up.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe in participants.
Yeah. Oh, let's see. Mute. There's a mute all. Is there an unmute all?
So
allow participants to unmute themselves. Okay. So now you should all be able to unmute yourself. Oh, I love this from Magnus. It will be on the North American tectonic plate. Excellent.
Jennifer, are you still trying to unmute everybody?
Oh, it should have worked.
Yeah,
you can talk,
I think
right?
people can. Yeah, people can have to unmute themselves. That's all I was trying to say here.
Oh, yeah. You can unmute yourself. Yeah.
Perhaps we should also consider to have a version of online version of the conference anyway. In both cases, if it's online or offline as well.
You mean combined, on and offline?
Yeah, or maybe everyone that have a paper has to arrive, but people who don't want to arrive can see it through the web.
My experience with meetings that were partitioned between physical group and remote group is more difficult to handle than all remote group, all virtual.
Can I interject a comment?
Of course.
I just think that the idea of having a online come offline parallel is a great idea. I think it should be followed up because there will be people who can't afford, for instance.
There's also the idea of having conferences with more than one location if it's partially virtual, and that would maybe also reduce a little bit the conflict between having just a single physical meeting with some virtual attendance.
Yeah, it will be distributed conference.
I'm not sure there is a going back. There will be a going back in the world in general after this pandemic is over. People just got used to being able to doing things remotely, and they will expect to be able to see class lectures and conferences and business meetings and what have you remotely. So I personally think that physical meetings are great, and of course traveling to Iceland or Salerno is also great, and meeting people is great. But there would be many people who would feel natural about seeing it remotely. We can reach many more people. I think there won't be even a possibility because everybody else will be doing this.
I think it's a very good point that we are in a different situation now, and we should think outside the box. We probably do want to combine the online with the offline, and this idea of Christoph of having distributed or multiple meetings is a very interesting one. We don't want to give up the physical meetings because we want to meet actually, but why not use technology as well?
May I say something? I suggest that we should be careful regarding these plans of these hybrid mixed online and physical conferences, because my understanding is that the CS community doesn't have much concrete experience with organizing these kinds of events, and there is always the risk that this mixed hybrid event is going to be strictly worse than, let's say, a pure online event, and that would be really depressing if it turns out to be that way. So I'd suggest that at least before making any decisions regarding organizing PODC in this hybrid manner, let's wait for some data from, let's say, other conferences that actually go through this experiment, because I see that there are risks. It's a possibility that both for physical participants and the virtual participants, it is going to be strictly worse than, for instance, what we are experiencing right now here.
Yeah, I think we also should, sorry.
Yeah, well, my understanding from hearing other conference organizers is that the mixed model is just a much bigger headache than the virtual only, which in turn I think is probably a bigger headache than a physical meeting. That said, we'll probably need to be able to allow some virtuality in the conferences from now on. For example, allowing some speakers to call in, to phone their presentations. And definitely, I think we should be recording our talks, whether in advance or during the conference. I think actually uploading talks in advance is not a bad idea. And then having shorter talks in the conference. That's something that doesn't really take too much and could be experimented with. But I think we have to see that we can meet in physically to begin with and then wonder about these questions.
I would second that. I was going to propose the same thing, that uploading talks ahead of the conference is very easy to do. And then just have your normal physical conference for people who are able to show up. I don't go to the conferences just to listen to the talks. That I can read papers on my own whenever I want. I go there so I can meet people and hang out with Gadi all day long, right? So I think that we don't want to discontinue. And the more complex the model is, the harder to implement. So just keep it as simple as possible. So uploading talks was very easy this year. We all did it. So I would recommend that for every year, actually. Thanks, Gadi. How do you do that? That comes up there.
You have reactions on the bottom, so.
Oh.
So Nitin, you propose now we upload all the talks and we go to conference and then we just have fun? Go out for dinner, lunch? I'm just kidding, I'm kidding.
Do the talks there too.
I'm just kidding, Nitin.
You can just have shorter talks like we had now. I mean, like 10 minutes talks, which is anyway what we managed to listen to before we tune out, at least some of us.
No, I agree. I agree with everything, Hagit. I was just pulling Nitin's leg. I agree.
We can have more talks or more breaks or more something.
Yeah, I think it was also good to have either a long period before or after the talk so people could get together and work without having to miss the talks. So I think that, just having it for a shorter contiguous session was a really good idea.
And if anybody's looking at the chats, there's a lot of support for, the uploading talks idea. One thing I think we can consider also is the notion of co-location. And that goes back to some stuff Christoph has been sending around even before the pandemic, right? But, maybe reduce a bit of travel. I'm not saying it is the right thing to do or not, but think about maybe disk and PODC, having different deadlines, different paper acceptance, etc. But if we're going to have shorter talks, maybe having one big meeting of the community or not. But those are things that become more possible also if we adopt a slightly different model.
Yeah, I don't like the idea. I mean, I would like to travel twice, both to France and to Iceland,
Yeah, that's not bad.
Why do you need a conference for that?
That's another question, but it's in addition to the usual travels. Once you get older, you pick the conferences by location more than by. Sorry, I'm taking it back. Joking.
One thing I think we should keep in mind is that with the damage that's occurred to the global economy, that we're all going to find funding more difficult than it has been in the past, and that going to several international conferences in a year is just going to be less feasible, even for the well-funded faculty member and probably especially for students. So this is just yet another factor to keep in mind that we probably cannot go back to the old way in the near future, and this is definitely the time to be thinking of possible alternatives as we've been doing in this meeting.
And another idea for the collocation, maybe collocating PODC and disk, they're a big conference, relatively big conference, and maybe that doesn't make much sense, but maybe, collocating, like having PODC and disk as the flagship distributed computing conferences, and then having other smaller conference collocated with them in a model that is a hybrid model with talks that are uploaded online, shorter talks on site. That's something also that one could consider. There had been some discussion about that in the Sirocco business meeting and steering committee this year. There was nothing very concrete there, right, Magnus? But those are just ideas that, one could think about.
So it seems that the mix model is a solution. Everybody can pick what he or she prefers, but it's more difficult to organize. So there is a trade-off here.
I'm not sure if it's only more difficult to organize. I think it's generally possible that, let's say, these mixed conferences, they can't be organized so well that it would be, for instance, for the participants as good an experience as, let's say, even a well-organized online conference. Just think about like coffee breaks. How do you have a coffee break where, let's say, both physical participants and online participants can, in a comfortable way, talk to each other. I really don't see good solutions for something like that.
I think it's clear that those who will not attend the physical conference will have a lesser experience, but maybe we shouldn't think of it as an all or nothing question. The other thing is that, and this, I don't know, the people who are watching, who's registered, etc. I wonder how are we exposed this way to a larger community? Because I know that as a participant, when I can listen in here and there, maybe half the time on a conference that is not PODC or DISC, but still something that there's like 2 sessions in the whole conference. I go there if it's a virtual conference. I'll never fly there, of course. So I wonder how many of these people we're getting this year this way.
I think in parts this will also simply be, even if we don't see these people in the talks, they may still look at the videos later. So I think we had about 100 people in a session, which are also considered quite good compared to what we usually see at the conference. But there's still the number we don't see because they look at the talks at a different time.
By the way, speaking of virtual, Jennifer mentioned the non-penalty for Salerno because we move it to next year. Are we prepared financially if the conference cannot be held next year either?
I'll have to ask Avery to answer that. He's the treasurer.
Can I make a quick comment for this edition of PODC, and that's more maybe to Christian or Yuval. So I thought that during the talks, it has been hard to ask questions because of this mute and mute stuff that we have to wait for the host to unmute. And looking at this current business meeting where there are 94 participants and we're all talking or asking for, a chance to talk, etc. I think that maybe letting people unmute themselves when they need to ask a question may be easier, or, or at least raise their hands and you just say whoever there speaks, etc. It would be more lively, the questions after the talks. That's just a suggestion, and obviously may go really wrong, and I don't know, but I thought we did it in Sirocco and some other conference that I took part online, and it was okay. That's just like a suggestion for this edition, and it's not such a deep discussion item.
Sure, yeah, I think that it's not a bad idea. I mean, it was my decision to use this default all are muted option, and maybe it was not necessarily the best one. I mean, we can try tomorrow and see how it works. Okay. I was concerned that with having like 100 people 100 participants in a meeting, you'll always have 2 or 3 who forgot to mute themselves, and then you'll start hear them speaking with their whatever wife or kids, which may be annoying for everybody else. But sure, I mean, we can try it and see how it works.
I think let me just interrupt you here because that's the opposite thing of what one can do actually. I'd rather I prefer the way it's been running now, because we have the chat. Everybody can post in the chat at any time, right? In the Zoom chat, and there's yet the other chat even, right? So I think that it's more, it gives it more structure if it's organized like we did it.
It's just my own experience that when I'm trying to listen to the talk and type in the chat, because I have to have my question there so that it gets asked, at some point I either give up asking the question or I just don't pay attention to the talk, because that's what I felt. And the talks are so short that you don't want to miss a minute of it because you're missing a lot, right?
Well, actually,
they're very compact.
You ask the question at the end, right? The questions come at the end. That's what we would have thought.
Yeah, I was just giving
one possibility could be to have the default be that participants can unmute themselves, and then if somebody forgets, maybe there's like a backup host for or backup chair for each session, maybe that person can just go and mute the people that forgot to mute themselves when they started talking to their kids or something.
Don't always know who is the person that forgot.
Oh, well, that's true. Yeah,
that may be.
Good
I mean,
point.
my experience from teaching using Zoom is that it's better to have everybody muted by default. Going back to Andrea's question, you can use the raise hand function rather than chat. I mean, if you have a question, you can simply raise your hand.
I did, but I think even for the session chair is a lot going on, and because the talks are so short and so fast, there's a lot going on fast. That's all. But it's just, I mean, it's not something terrible or horrible. It was just a remark, and I saw that some people in the chat seem to have felt the same. It doesn't matter too much, Yuval. And just to clarify, everybody starting muted, I think is a great idea. But can we unmute ourselves? No, right?
No, with the current configuration, you cannot.
Yeah, okay.
May I suggest something? This is Yula. So maybe one way to solve this problem is to have everybody muted during the talk, but then unmute them for the questions and unmute them all. And then when the next talk starts, you mute them all again.
Sure, that's also something we can consider. I suggest that we will discuss it in the chairs stream on Zulip and reach a decision before tomorrow's sessions. And we will definitely take those comments into consideration.
Is there a banner option which like a banner on the top of Zoom or for every talk which just says, please keep yourself mute, like switch off your cell phones?
We can simply try it, for 1 or 2 talks and see if it works. My experience teaching is that I let everybody speak whenever they want, and it's much more lively, like Andrea just said. I like it. I mean, it works. I never had a problem with that.
That's with an Israeli class. I mean, that's.
I was gonna say it, and Edith and Faye, sorry if we make some comments here that are not appropriate, but maybe the Brazilians and the Israelis talking, and there is the Swiss and the German discipline on the other side. I'm fine with anything. It was just a comment. So whatever is decided, that is good.
In my class, no student spoke.
I thought I'll try to answer Shai's question about the money for next year. I'm not the finance chair, but I had done this many times. So ACM is your insurance agents, basically. ACM bears the cost, and they bear the profit too. So that they organize enough conferences that they can take a loss on a few conferences every year. So I don't think we need to worry about it. Of course, you don't want to lose money deliberately, but do the best you can. And if you lose money, you lose money.
Right. That's also how I understand it.
Yeah, it's not a big deal for ACM.
So Mike, did you still have a comment, or was this a leftover raised hand? And now he's muted. I suspect it might be leftover.
Yes, it was leftover.
Okay.
So Jennifer, I have a different proposal altogether if I can change the topic.
Sure.
Can we have a sort of some conferences have these rapid fire talks, these 5-minute talks that we had today. Many conferences have a session like that for either late breaking results or sometimes controversial claims and controversial results. They're sometimes very lively. I have been to a few of those.
We used to have that. It was called the rump session. And it was fun, yeah. But for some reason we stopped having it. I don't know why. It was very informal. It was more like you just go like right before the business meeting or whatever, and you just sign your name on a sheet of paper.
Or a session on rejected papers, right?
Well, actually, I like that RAM session very much, and I never understood why this has stopped.
Yeah, but
I think it stopped because it got scheduled in like the middle of the night after the business
well, it was
meeting.
after the business meeting, right?
Yeah, it was always like really late, and then
Yeah.
people didn't
tired.
Want to feel like going at 11 to hear a talk or missing dinner or whatever. It was just that the program became fuller, and then it was stuck somewhere inconvenient, and people stopped attending it. But if we go to shorter talks and recorded videos, now we have time for it. So hey, let's bring it back.
So I guess anything else about the venues, because I want to make sure we get through the agenda items, and then we will have open floor at the end for other topics like that. Okay, good, thank you.
Sorry, I'm not sure it's related to venues, but there have been like floating ideas about changing the format of the...
yeah, that comes later on the agenda. We have a topic on that. Yeah. Okay, so then there's something weird with my slide here. What I wanted to do was to just remind you all who the steering committee is, and then thank the people who are going off the steering committee. So Yuval is going off, and I don't know why that I had that in yellow before. So just would like to thank Yuval so much for all of his service to PODC, last year's treasurer and this year's general chair. And then Edith is also leaving. She was the 2018 PC chair. So I'd like to thank Edith so much for all that she's done, and especially, great advice that she's given me. Then for the next year, I'm pleased to announce that the PC chair will be Karen Sensor-Hillel, and we are still working on finalizing who the treasurer is, but I think we're going to end up with a great person there as well. So welcome to the steering committee. Okay, so now we're going to have the reports. Oh, Christian, I messed up. You didn't already give your report. But anyway, why don't you go ahead and give your report as PC chair? Or did you give it already? I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm unmuting myself. You can hear me?
Yeah.
Can you
Yes.
unshare?
I will unshare. Yep.
Yes. And I'm going to make this presentation available now. Let me find the correct one. I'm going to make this presentation available in the Zulip chat system later, where there should be a stream for discussing the things more, because we might want to discuss some things a bit in more detail later, not the statistics, but more some of the experience here. Yeah. Okay, so PODC 2020, from the program committee's view, program committee were 40 people altogether. I thank everyone for their work, yeah, and we had 140 external reviewers in total. So that was actually only coming together when we produced the proceedings, and at the final end, I would like to thank everybody for serving on the program committee. As you can see here, my approach was to have a large program committee so as to be able to better ask somebody to join the committee and not run immediately into bandwidth constraints where somebody has to read 30 papers or even more. What is a paper that I'm just going to talk about after I talk also about the conflict policy that was made a slight bit more strict than in the previous years. Also, in an effort to have a broader representation of all papers among the PC members, it was not always the case that only the experts get to read something, but also maybe something should be a bit broader represented, because the people who have worked on the same problem with the same people could be more easily excluded now with this stricter policy from reviewing the papers in some of the smaller subfields of the field. Yeah. Of course, for the declaration of conflicts, Since submissions are anonymous, has been installed not this year, but some years ago, it's now a responsibility of the authors, and it requires some more oversight on behalf of the program chair, such that authors do not select the reviewers of them for whom they already know that they won't like their papers. There were some cases like this, but there should be expressed in private email to the program chair, who has to act here like a trusted agent, of course. The submission format altogether, that's something that I changed. I deliberately changed this year, and I think I discussed it also in the steering committee, that we wanted to enforce more uniformity between what is submitted and what is published and what is reviewed in between, such that the papers that are reviewed are essentially the same that are going to appear in the proceedings. Now, it turns out that nobody likes reading in the 2-column format that ACM has for our proceedings, and that's why we had to experiment a bit with these ACM templates. But ACM luckily has made available new templates just a short time ago, where one can just change the header information and everything else remains the same for a 1-column submission format. Nice to read with ample margins if you still write and review and mark up on paper. And the 2-column format that shows up in the end, and we did some calculations such that 17 pages of this 1-column format turned into 10 pages in the 2-column format for the final version. Yeah, so the motto was, what you submit is what you reviewed and is what you publish in the end. The review process of PODC started, of course, when the world was still different as February, with the submissions in mid-February. Round 1, every paper was read by 3 PC members. We had about 5 weeks for this, or 5 weeks probably. The grades were, as you can see here. Then there was a 2nd round, and every paper that was bubbling up towards the more positive review, the more positive phases, was actually going into this 2nd round. And it was the majority of the papers that went to this 2nd round, namely the 134 papers were read by at least 1 other PC member that was selected. And then discussions were concluded online, or conducted online, and sometimes concluded online with a verdict. And with the remaining papers, we had a meeting spread over 2 days and 4 or 5 hours on each day, and gave us a good experience already trying Zoom, because the world then was a different one already. Okay, and so here's some statistics that you've all been waiting for. You can read it in the preface also, but nobody reads the preface of the proceedings. Here is the statistics also with over the number of the years. And so we had 187 regular submissions, and 25% of them accepted. 10 of the regular submissions were asked if they wanted to be also accepted as a brief announcement, and I think all of them went for this opportunity. There were 16 brief announcements submitted, and 8 of them, or 50%, were actually also accepted. So you can see in the lower half of the screen here the statistics of regular submissions and acceptance rates over the years. And it's roughly in line with what we have, but we can definitely observe a growing trend, 10 more submissions each year in the last 5 years. That's not exponential growth, but it is growth. I'm not seeing the chat, so in case there is anything to discuss now, we could discuss this. I'm going to have to say more about this later, but if somebody wanted to say something, where is the chat? Oh, here.
I had a question. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, I had a quick question. Since nowadays all the proceedings are online, why do we still have 2-column? It's like such a pain to read.
Exactly. I mean, I don't know, because we are bound to the ACM. ACM says conference proceedings are like this, and that's probably it. I did not investigate how to change this. Yeah. But I have experienced at one time where ACM experimented with a format of collecting the papers in a sort of markup format, such that they produced a screen readable version of it as well. Usually the math sucks, to be blunt.
I wanted just to make a quick comment and thank Christian, because the virus hit the PC midway, like I don't even remember, but we are not expecting all this virtual stuff. And I know it was, in my case, the first PC that I had after the virus hit, and everybody's trying to scrambling to try to get life together and finish teaching classes and stuff like that. So people are late with reviews, and Christian was very gracious and accommodated everybody's needs. And I would like to thank him for running a great PC in such a difficult time. So.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all who helped. Thank you all who participated here as well. Let me go on to, well, okay, one more comment I see about single and double column. Ideally, of course, it would be something that everybody can choose for themselves, whether they want to read single or double column. So I have seen, for example, that with IACR, where I was president for a number of years, and looked into the publishing business, that Springer now has everything on the website as well. So if you go, if we were with a commercial publisher like Springer, they would offer this already, yeah? So that you can read the paper in single column on your mobile or in double column, so that it, or in whatever other format, so that is a PDF. This will, I think this will eventually come, but it will first come with the publishers, where commercial publishers, where they are already equipped doing this. Then it might become with ACM, which is a .org and has less finances. Then it will come with other publishers that even have less finances, like Dagstuhl, Lipix, where DISC is now published, because I observed, for example, that some of the Lipix procedures are a bit behind still of what ACM does in terms of beautifying the papers and things around. So this is something we cannot really change in a small field. We want to go with something that everybody else does. Yeah. Okay, I have more if you're in the chat on this. Comments, please do. I have more on the statistics here of accepted papers. PC authored papers in a special category. We discussed these online only in order to take some steam out of the PC meeting, the online meeting, also because the online meeting could not be attended by every author, every PC member. Yeah. The acceptance rate for PC papers is higher, but this is obviously what we would expect if the PC consists of the experts in the field. There is one other graph or list that I'm showing here. PODC has a number of topics, and I basically took them from last year's list of topics. And maybe that should be time when the steering committee or we current and future program chairs together consider the list of topics here, because you can see some of the topics, or our topic list is in the number of submissions, not very representative. So the paper can be in many of the topics. It's basically the authors who pick these topics. Now, it could also mean that we are open and we solicit submissions. We just don't get any on, I don't know, game theoretic approaches to distributed computing. We got 3, right? Quantum and optic-based algorithms, there was only 1. And then you can see on these topics on how the acceptance rates differ over various topics. So this year, and maybe I brought this in, I invited a lot of people from distributed, from crypto distributed protocols and sort of blockchain protocols also. And then we realized that this might have attracted a lot of blockchain protocol papers, but they actually didn't do so well here. And I have to say, as a personal experience here, that some of them were actually also papers that would not typically have gone to PODC, but they were all the papers here, whether they were on a topic that was highly successful, like coding and reliable communication, or others like the last topic on the list here, like wireless networks. They were quite successful in terms of statistically being accepted, but all the decisions were basically taken on the merit of a paper by the PC. So it's the PC who decided, and the composition of the PC who decided this. So Hagit posts that there was a revamped list of topics, and this is maybe a good idea, seeing some statistics like these in the future years, because there also seems to be that category here of fault tolerance, reliability, and also graph algorithms that are overbooked in a way where there are a lot of papers that tick these on, right? So maybe we have to refine our list of topics as we go along, okay? And what else? Yeah, more statistics. We had the number of external reviewers. We wrote altogether 500,000 words of reviews, and my email box counted from to the authors several hundred emails, to the PC several hundred emails, and most emails, of course, among the organizers, to ACM and back. And yeah, lessons learned for me: HotCRP, the system we used. I recommend we continue using it to build some experience. It has tons of features. It has features for everything one can think of, but it's not necessarily implemented in exactly the way that you think it will implement it, but it's implemented in the way that the author thought it will be implemented. So it makes a lot of sense to actually talk to somebody who knows it, or to experiment with with yourself as being a PC member, the dummy PC member, just to see what the others see, multiple browsers and configuring things like this. HotCRP also integrates the publishing step. The publishing step, once I figured out for myself how this is kicked off, is relatively easy. There are some small glitches that were not mine, but ACM has, together with Kohler now, Eddie Kohler, who runs HotCRP, has fixed some of these glitches, and they were both together responsive. It takes a couple of weeks to do that, yeah. The collection of the proceedings wants to get the attention of the ACM people or Kohler at the other end, because at one time it was for me like, it doesn't work for me, but please you figure out among the two of you what's going wrong. But then we get a direct insight into ACM systems. The very last item here is that the actual time to publishing, once I had created now on the ACMs and the HotCRP system, big XML file with all the metadata. Once this is ready, it doesn't take so long to publish this, because when the ACM looked at it and found some mistakes, or actually PDFs that did not display correctly, it was only 1 week ago. And this, because I was on vacation, I was offline, the authors were on vacation and offline, it took 2 or 3 days to get it fixed. But after the final version was in, they just hit publish, and the proceedings were online after 6 hours. Yeah? So that was actually relatively fast, but of course I don't know what steps went on behind the scenes. Okay, so that's the end of my report from the program committee. If there is anything people wanted to discuss on this, maybe now is the time, or the Zulip chat in the awards session is the same, is also good.
Okay, then let's see, we will go to the next report, which is Yuval's report. And I have the slides here, so if you want to talk, I'll just move the slides forward.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Please move forward. So first, I'd like to thank our sponsors, and you can see them here. And especially the two industrial sponsors, Novi, which is a spin-off of Facebook, and Oracle. And the reason they deserve a special thanks is that the sponsorship package we originally sold them was assuming that we'll have a physical meeting, and many of the features we promised them were based on this assumption, and they stayed with us, and they kept on financing all our activities, even though we have moved to a virtual conference. And that's the only reason that we could afford not collecting any registration fees from you guys. So really, they deserve a lot of credit. You can also find some information about Novi in Zulip and in the email we sent you. So I think that you can move to the next slide.
Sorry.
Yeah, so here are the individuals that we should thank. Most of them were mentioned earlier. I forgot to add Sinhao, of course, and I'm sorry for that. Sinhao did a great job until we discovered that we will not have workshops this year, which was kind of a decision we had to take because with such time zone constraints, we couldn't afford having workshops. I'd like to add special thanks to the steering committee, who usually, from my experience from last year, they were not as active in the day-to-day decisions of the actual conference. And this year, since we decided to move to an online, we were forced to move to this online format. They were really, really involved. Jennifer worked so hard. And Faith and Eula and Edith, they all contributed a lot. And as was mentioned before, George Welsh really rescued us. He worked so hard and did all the heavy lifting with the servers and all that. And also special thanks to Yuka. Yuka was, we originally started with Yuka offering us a small help with the YouTube channel, and ended up with Yuka doing pretty much everything around, and he's still very active with the Zulip chats and everything. So yeah, Yuka is basically part of the organizing team de facto. Okay, you can move to the next slide, please. So this move to the online version that happened somewhere in March or April or something like that. Obviously, it required a lot of decisions that we were not really prepared to take. We had to think fast on some things. Things are still being discussed. As I mentioned earlier, there is an active discussion among the organizing team and the session chairs on Zulip, and it's being updated every hour pretty much. And at the end, I will prepare a summary of that and make it available to everybody, because as was mentioned earlier, it is not clear. This is not necessarily the last online conference we have. We actually know for sure that DISC is going to be online as well, and it's not clear how PODC and DISC will, what will happen next year. Beyond that, if anyone else beyond the organizing team and the session chairs, if you have any tips or suggestions or comments, please find us and let us know. You can use Zulip. In the random stuff stream, there is a special topic called DISC 2020 ideas that Yuka started, and you can write your comments there. You can also email it to me or use a PM. And there is also this conference models stream that Christoph has started, and there is a very important discussion going on over there, which is, I think, strongly related to, in some aspects, to having PODC and DISC in an online format. So please also use this stream to let us know what you think, or vote at some stage and things like that. So that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Avery, do you have a slide to share? I'll have you share your slide.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I can share screen. Right. Okay, so hopefully that looks, everyone can see that. Okay, so I guess one consequence of, here, why don't I move that here? There we go. All right, so one consequence of moving virtually is that the finances became quite a bit simpler. So in terms of expenses, we had the 2 doctoral dissertation awards, which we budgeted at $500. This is all US dollars on this slide, so about $500 each. We had a Zoom license to run the online conference, which is relatively inexpensive, less than $120. There's always some ACM overhead to include. And then as we've mentioned, thankfully, there's no penalties for us delaying the conference in Italy next year. So no additional expenses other than these, at least for this year. And in terms of income, once again, as you've all mentioned,
are there supposed to be numbers showing on your slide?
Are there no numbers in brackets?
Does anybody else see numbers? No.
No.
What do you see?
I see the title, and then it's blank. It just says Treasurer's Report PODC 2020, and the rest is blank.
I think we see a frozen video.
Ah.
Oh. My screen sharing is paused for whatever reason. Resume share.
Ah.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Sorry. All right. All right. So there's the visual version of what I just said. Okay. So thankfully, as Yuval mentioned, Oracle Labs and Novi stayed on with us. They had originally sponsored $2,000 each for the in-person version, and they kept the same level of sponsorship for the online version. And so what that meant was we could go ahead with no registration fees. So what we have is a surplus of approximately $2,500, which is good. So with regards to the earlier question about penalty if we decide to withdraw from Salerno next year, I actually don't have the specific number, how much it would cost us. It was basically, just quickly determined that we could delay and not incur any penalties. So I'd have to go back and find out how much it would cost us if we decide not to have it in Salerno. I think there's also an organizational cost. Roberto DePrisco did a lot of work in interfacing with the hotel and getting everything set up. We basically had all the details worked out. The conference was ready to go. And so all of that could pretty much just be repeated and done next year without too much effort. So I think kind of if we have to cancel and go elsewhere, I think there's a lot of wasted work and organizational costs. So that's one reason to try to stay on with the Salerno conference, as much as we possibly can. I think that's it for me. If there's any questions, I can try to answer them. I don't know if I can see the chat. Screen sharing. Chat. There we go. Okay, otherwise that's it from me. I think you need to unmute yourself, Jennifer.
Sorry. Hagit wanted to say a few words about a DISC 2020. Did you have a slide to share, Hagit?
No, nothing. But
Okay.
Actually, not much is left to be said. I guess most of the things were said by now. DISC is going to be fully virtual, indeed. Planned at the same planned week as before. Yuka is going to be the virtuality chair for the conference. Both of us are monitoring comments in the chat and on Zulip for suggestions and various ideas. And the list of accepted papers will be published very soon. The authors know their results, but I need to finish a few things.
Okay.
I hope you will be there.
Thank you. Okay, so Christoph wanted to have a discussion about conference models that we've already been touching on. So do you have slides you want to share, Christoph?
I have no slides, but I have posted the results in Zulip from the previous year, and to some extent they're a bit outdated. I can give a very short summary of what I think is relevant here.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so this is from a survey I conducted end of last year. There were more than 100 responses, so I think this is at least a relevant slice through the community. And I think what was, or the results were pretty clear on the strong support for considering to have multiple deadlines instead of just a single one. And another thing that had pretty strong support was the idea of considering to possibly run this the conference or conferences as a journal instead. So one should, so for these questions did not provide a great deal of detail. So this should be discussed more and how this precisely could look. There were also some questions regarding conference models, but first of all, there was no clear consensus on anything from that. And second, given the recent events, I expect that opinions have changed anyways. So what I think would make sense from my perspective is to consider some possible initial steps we could do easily, but mostly to maybe think this through more and have then a more informed discussion and decision-making process, maybe a DISC or so. I think, yeah, well, one thing that would be fairly easy to do without significant changes would probably to try out having more than one deadline for one or both conferences. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to say as a short summary. We already had some of the discussion before on the other topic because it overlaps possibly with how the conference is structured.
And if I may continue a bit, so I think in these Zulip discussions, one concrete proposal of an example of what we might want to do is to just try to organize things so that, for instance, DISC would have some year 2 deadlines. So there would be the usual deadline at the usual time, like whatever, April, May, plus an additional deadline, something like maybe September, October, November. So there would be 2 opportunities to submit your paper to DISC. So in total for PODC and DISC, there would be 3 opportunities to submit your paper throughout the year.
Yuka, why 3 and not 4, like 2 for PODC, 2 for this every year?
Yeah. I mean, this was just intended as, let's say, the smallest possible change that we could experiment with. So in the long term, it might switch to something like maybe both DISC and PODC have 2 deadlines, or maybe this joint online and physical DISC and PODC conference is going to have 4 deadlines throughout the year or something like this. But I think we don't want to make huge changes all of a sudden just to try out something. But I think trying this out with one of the conferences with either PODC or DISC so that there would be, let's say, 2 deadlines might be a small thing that would give at least some flavor of what it would feel like if it did something like that.
So I should have been listening more to your online conversations, but what purpose is supposed to be achieved by having multiple deadlines that we don't have now by doing this over several conferences?
Well, first of all, if you're looking at, let's say, PODC and DISC, they are these 2 conferences. Of course, yes, you can also consider many other conferences, either, let's say, more general thesis conferences or, let's say, kind of smaller conferences. But if you have a paper where you have this feeling that, okay, this is a good PODC DISC type paper that I would like to submit to next PODC disk. And if this happens in, let's say, for instance, right now, the next deadline is going to be in whatever, February. So this possibility of having more deadlines, which also would enable this more journal-like mode of operation, which would mean that I could now submit a paper. I could get back an answer that instead of it being either accepted or rejected, it could also be accepted subject to major revision, and then I could revise it and then submit to the next disk deadline. And this way, hopefully, we could have, for instance, possibly high quality papers that are eventually accepted.
Let me echo this point here that Yuka made. The major benefit of this model is that you get to talk to the same reviewers again and not to a new sample. So if the first sample tells you to change it like this and the second sample would like it to be like this, then you're running the risk of not doing a lot of unnecessary work. Yeah. To give you a bit of background in the ISCR for the cryptology field, there were discussions like this several years ago, and what has happened there is that 2 of the 4 sub-conferences, not the ones that span the whole field of cryptology, but that conferences that span sub-areas, they have transformed into this model, specifically the CHESS conference, the cryptographic hardware and embedded systems, and the FSC conference that turned into the transactions on symmetric cryptology. So these are now published in exactly this model, and we can look at there how it works. Yeah. But the main thing here that for this field, how I observe this field is that it would first need a kind of integration between disk and PODC. So there is integration. It's largely similar people, but there would need to be a more formal integration to see these 2, at least these 2, as one.
And Yuka, can I add? So what you proposed, I didn't understand the whole scope. I thought it was just the 2 deadlines. I didn't understand that you could like resubmit with major revisions. For that part, wouldn't it be easier just to have a rebuttal phase where, you know, you could get your comments and then address, Christian is saying no, you could say no. Can you comment, why not?
I think the whole idea here is that this mode of operation would be closer to a journal. So that, let's say, your revision would be a real revision. I mean, I'm not really talking about something like rebuttal, like, okay, the PC members misunderstood something or something like this. I'm mainly talking about something where everybody understood everything correctly, but and everybody in the PC agrees that, okay, this is not yet good enough, but if the authors really spent like 1 month seriously working on this, and somebody actually seriously double checked that the authors did what they were asked to do, then it might be a great PODC disk paper. So I'm really talking about this. I think rebuttals are kind of an orthogonal issue here.
I must say I don't understand the mechanism in the following sense. Let's say I submit to the first deadline, the one that is farthest from the conference. So if it is accepted subject to major revision, I have the option of revising it. And moreover, the very same program committee will look at it. Now, on the other hand, if I submit to the second deadline, if I have the same type of paper and the same type of reaction, do a major revision, then I guess, first of all, the paper will appear in the conference next year. And second, I guess a different program committee will look at it. Or do you mean to have, like in a journal, that the program committee maybe never changes in the sense of editors staying forever or having the same reviewers again?
So probably it will not work with 2 deadlines. Wall needs like 4 deadlines. That's the role model that these hybrids have taken.
I would like to respond because I should also say a few words about the underlying thought process I had in the question for this survey. So the minimal thing that multiple deadlines can do for us is just closing this gap between the conferences. But I think also it's a starting point for further options like supporting such a more journal-oriented review process where there also can be revisions. But there's in the times we have these days, I don't think there's any issue about actually disseminating our work. I mean, as soon as your paper is accepted, you have the stamp of approval, and you probably put it online beforehand or at the latest at that point. And the presentation within the conference, of course, then will take place on the next occasion. But before that, you can already upload your video. I mean, all these kind of things that we're already doing now or considering to do.
Yeah,
but what about changing the program committee?
I mean, a revision should be seen by the same reviewers, possibly one more if you think that you need to get an additional opinion.
May I say something? So first of all, I'd like to second what Christoph has just suggested. And on top of that, I think that we should separate between this notion of having 2 deadlines, which is one change, smaller change, and this notion of going towards kind of a more journal proceedings or something like that, where you have the same program committee looking at the major revision and all that. That's a different thing. And I suggest that let's start with the smallest possible modification. Let's just have 2 deadlines, same program committee, giving you a stamp of approval for each deadline. If your paper has been rejected from one deadline, you can decide to submit it again, but this will require, I mean, yet, you know, a fresh round of reviews and everything. And that's it. I mean, it will just give you an opportunity to have your acceptance stamp twice a year or 3 times a year rather than 2. Because with the current structure of PODC and DISC, things are very unbalanced. We have this long period of, you know, dead period where we cannot submit our papers if we think that they are good and, you know, they should appear in PODC or DISC. Yeah, and this idea is supposed to first of all deal with that issue.
Can I say something? I mean, there are 2 things that are worrying me. One is that if I miss the PODC deadline, now I just send it to DISC. Now, if we change it, then I will just send it to the next PODC you know, deadline, and will not send it to DISC. So I think it will affect DISC. The level of DISC will go probably down. And the other thing is that if I can send twice a year, then, you know, if I have a half-cooked paper, I will just send it. It's great to get reviews from the best people in the field, and then I can fix everything later on. So I will send a paper even if I know for sure that it's going to be rejected, just to get the reviews.
Why don't you do it now?
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
how is this different?
Yeah. It's been brought to my attention that we are over time and the senior junior meetings were already supposed to start. So I think we can continue this conversation in Zulip, where it will also be nicely archived, although somebody thinks we should just keep talking in person.
Jennifer, why don't you keep going? Because only a very tiny number of people go to that other meeting, right?
Okay, all right, that's fine. I mean, I'm fine with continuing then.
People want to stick around. I'm not suggesting we should.
Yeah, but also, yeah, okay. But it should also be in Zula, and I'll definitely put the stuff in the chat in Zula. But keep talking then. Sorry.
Do they have other Zoom rooms they can go to, Jennifer? I'm guessing yes, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh, they can
just making sure.
Oh, for the junior senior. Yes, it's not
yeah.
using this one. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
In that case, I'll just disappear to this senior junior meeting.
Okay. Sorry, because you're like a key player in this conversation.
So I just want to say that there are conferences that already use more than a single deadline, and we should really learn from their experience before we decide on anything, because in particular, there could be unknowns, things that we don't even realize we should consider about this. So we should definitely see what they're doing. Maybe they tried things that didn't work for them and so on.
Yeah, I was actually ready to say the same thing. So Karen was faster than me. I know that they apply this model in VLTB, for instance. Christian mentioned that in chat earlier. And I believe that we need to hear much more about how this works and how problems like the one that Sai mentioned can be solved, and maybe others that we cannot imagine before we are ready to reach a decision, I think.
Nice thought for some conference. Oh, sorry, Christoph.
You can go first.
No, I was just going to say that I thought some conference like Sigmetrics, but maybe it's my misunderstanding, that you can submit just to one of the deadlines, not multiple deadlines a year. You can, to prevent this idea that you just submit something, get feedback and submit it again, etc. I thought it was at most once per year. I don't know exactly how they would check it, but that's what I thought. But I think it's better to look at the details like Hula and Karen were saying.
But Andrea, then what is the goal? I mean, the goal seems to be different then, because you do not have more papers or whatever, but you have a paper that is more like a journal. And does this mean that PODC will be named a journal, or what does it mean?
I think the goal will be, instead of you rushing, like there is one PODC deadline a year and you want to submit your paper, the deadline is coming, your paper's not ready, you send it anyway, because otherwise you have to wait for another year, or maybe you send to this, but there are fewer deadlines that you would consider a year. This way, if your paper's not ready for that particular deadline, you know that 3-4 months later, there'll be another one coming and you don't mind that much waiting. You see what I mean? I think that would be the main benefit, that, people will actually, instead of sending less polished papers, they'll wait and send more polished papers to the conference, which might make more sense. But there were all these other ideas that were floating around here, even this, major revisions type of stuff. So I'm just giving what was my view on this, and I may be completely wrong, but I think that's how some of the conferences do it. And different conferences in other areas of computer science maybe do it in different ways.
Well, I think Gadi is right about disclosing submissions. Sigmetrics does this, but there isn't a second, Sigmetrics that people are competing with.
True.
VLDB does it, there is no competition. And here it will happen. I can see myself just submitting to PODC every paper I have.
If PODC has one deadline, in this case 2, this might give a lift to disk.
Exactly.
Exactly the point.
Compare it to the current configuration. I mean, in the current configuration, there is one deadline for PODC and one deadline for disk, which is, 2.5 or 3 months after PODC, and that's it. And now you have to wait for 9 months until the next PODC. So why would, if you add another deadline for disk somewhere in the middle of those 9 months, how would that reflect badly on disk?
I think
arguably the current.
It's not a big deal, but I mean, if you have another deadline, when will be the conference? If you can have another deadline, when will you have the conference? I wrote this in the chat. The number of submissions to disk is not that smaller than the number of submissions to PODC. Definitely for this year, and I actually have the numbers for prior years, and it's not like a big difference. It's like 10 fewer submissions or something like that. So contrary to what this discussion is based on, The number of submissions does not support this feeling that, oh, DISC is not getting enough submissions because it's so soon after PODC. People just tune their horn and time it in this way.
I think we have to recognize that we can only do something like this if the field defines itself. The field seems to be PODC and DISC now, the discussion, but the field defines itself and does the same thing for both. Otherwise, it will fail because then there's an imbalance being created. Just like what Nitin said, that there's not another sigmetrics, right? And so that's my first thing. I've also written this in a chat in the Zulip where I started the thing. So yes, space PODC and DISC 6 months apart, that would help. But even more would be make PODC and DISC two separate things of the same organization so that there can be the same policy in both, like what we are starting to do in a vague way, apparently.
So I would like to reiterate that I think that we're not ready to take a decision yet. We should just decide to, you know, maybe set a couple of people to figuring out what the information is that's available, what options are good, and then make more consistent and informed presentation at some point, and then maybe decide further down the road. But even that should be decided, right? That we want to figure this out.
Yourself, what is the vision regarding, so okay, usually for a conference there is a target of some number of papers accepted, and now if there will be 2 deadlines, will there be a static budget of half the papers for each one, or how is that going to work?
So, I mean, one of the problems of this discussion is that there are plenty of different proposals going around now, and it's confused. So what I had in mind is pretty simple or I would have gone with like 4 deadlines, maybe for a joint PODC DISC conference or separate. And the assumption here was that the overall number of submissions or accepted papers wouldn't change that much under this assumption. And this would spread things out a bit further in time. One would have less time to the next deadline. And this could be a basis for these further changes if one is interested in that. Like this process might support a proper journal style review because it's just spread out more over the year, but this would then build on that. So the solution space is very big here.
Mm-hmm. I guess if we are anyway moving towards virtual conferences with these shorter talks, then just having more papers or maybe even an unbounded number of papers subject to some constraints is also a possibility.
I second to that, yeah.
Isn't that archive?
But archive is not reviewed, right? So here there should be a standard of what is a PODC paper, and you need to meet that bar.
Yeah, and from my perspective, if we would consider the journal option, for me it means to actually raise the standard. So we say this is a top-notch journal in our field. But then again, as already has been pointed out, we would maybe be more efficient in our reviewing process overall. And this would enable journal publications in a much shorter time than they happen now.
I think our journal reviews are so slow. Perhaps it's the nature of our papers or the nature of the people in the community, but if we're going to wait for journal reviews before publishing papers in conferences, then we're going to publish results that are 3 years out of date.
Yeah. This I see as a serious problem of our system, and if we impose an actual, schedule on this, it might change.
I doubt it.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe it because, for instance, in PLTP, they have something like a 13 or 14 or 16, I don't remember, page limit. But in a 14-page paper, a proof does not fit, right? And also, need a huge amount of time to prepare the proof. So it's not for sure that a model that works very well for another conference will work for PODC as well, unless if we decide to make very big changes to what a journal paper means for us. So I'm not negative, right? I just need a little bit more information to understand where exactly we are heading to if we go to this model.
I think that all the special issues have given us a glimpse at what it's like to insist on having journal versions for conference papers and try to get them in the timely manner. And that's for a select, 5 or 6 papers that seem the most promising. And even that is like taking forever and very difficult to get through. So I can understand why SIGGRAPH papers are journal papers, but their journal papers are short and they don't have any proofs. I can't see us changing our conference to a journal in any meaningful way. If we want to keep the standards of actually checking proofs that we have in journals and keep the timeliness of conferences. I don't think these two can be reconciled.
But that also means that we're happy with not actually checking the proofs in the first place, right? Because so many papers never make it to a journal.
You can be happy or not happy, but I'm not happy with this COVID situation, but it's a force of nature, This is not about, I just look at the special issues. We have a lot of experience with that. It just doesn't work. I mean,
can I make a small?
On the other hand, it should be clear when we are evaluated, during evaluations, that in our community, having a journal is not the same as in other computer science communities, right? In other areas. Because in many countries, European countries, it's a matter of numbers and not of quality. And we should somehow make it clear that having a journal of 60 pages requires much more work than having a journal of 13 pages with no proofs at all, maybe, I guess, right? Because I remember this was a discussion that we made a lot of years ago, maybe more than 5 years ago, again in a business meeting, during a PODC business meeting. And there were people that had this argument saying that when we are evaluated, these people from Spain, from other countries, this is true even in Greece, right? That people should know that a stock, a PODC, they are very high quality conferences. Maybe comparable to journals. To some journals, at least. I don't know.
I have a small suggestion actually, which might be much closer to what we do today. So it's not unusual for me, at least, to submit a paper. I get rejected from one conference, let's say DISC, I submit to PODC and vice versa, after revising, of course. It would be nice to have the option of submitting my old reviews, actually, as an option to the author. I would much rather make it all open to the reviewer and make their life easier to say, here is what I had, here is why it was rejected, here is the improved paper. Wonder whether we can make that an option for the author. So nothing changes. The author just submits something extra that the reviewers can look at or not.
Nitin, we had this in IACR.
Oh, you do?
It was discussed 5-10 years ago. It was all encouraged. It didn't change much.
Oh, okay.
IACR has Eurocrypt, AsiaCrypt, and Crypto. There are 3 conferences. There's a submission every 4 months, right?
And people don't submit the old reviews?
They do some, but it doesn't make much of a difference. People are still unhappy with the situation because you don't get the same reviewer set. Because if you are a reviewer, first of all, there's it's complicated because of anonymity of the previous reviewers. It's some text that you see, you don't know who it is, you cannot tell. You cannot even know who wrote this, because if you would know that this or this person you would trust or not trust, so it seems not to take away the steam from the whole situation.
So I know that in a,
I guess with blind review, it's problematic maybe.
no, although
reviews are always blind review.
here,
Some conferences, systems conferences, have you ask you to include the reviews that you got in previous submissions and possibly respond to them. I know that the Usenix ATC did that this year.
yeah, in new wave,
I think maybe Eurosys as well. So this is something you can consider asking people to, if your paper was rejected, please include the reviews and respond to them.
The other related suggestion is to publish reviews of accepted papers. I do that for my own papers on my own website personally, just voluntarily. But I find it very useful when I look at my own reviews to calibrate the paper because the reviewers say things that are not in the paper sometimes that they observe. I don't know if that's any other conference does that or not. Does anybody know? Publishing reviews of papers that are accepted.
It just sounds like so much work for the reviewers, for the PC and all that. I mean, just sanitizing all of that. It seems like, I mean, there's already so much work on a program committee that anything that adds to it seems to me should have like a huge, huge benefit for the publication process.
Maybe, yeah.
But the quality of the reviews may go up.
I think publishing it is not a good idea. I mean, if you want to take away points from the review and improve your paper, then go ahead and do it.
Well, it looks to me we were talking about several subjects. Maybe we can just indeed concentrate on the smallest one, like I think Christoph said, do the minimal, maybe not yet minimal change, but maybe minimal discussion on the minimal change. So discuss only the 2 deadlines for disk. Maybe it has advantages of its own. If it has advantages by its own, then maybe the rest is not necessarily a help, but a baggage. Let's say one could say this could be a substitute to the very, very, very old idea of moving disk 6 months away from PODC, which we could never do because of
a reason that is possibly no longer relevant.
Yeah, possibly, at least for the next year, maybe it's not relevant, but we can see. I mean, for the current disk, I guess it's not, it's too late. And next year, I don't know, who knows? But I guess the 2 deadlines could solve this, right? In some sense, it could catch papers that otherwise would go to PODC, right? A paper right now would wait to the next conference, which is PODC. So if there is a deadline of disk, let's say 1 month from now, or 2 months from now, then people might send it to disk.
As the co-PC chair of Opudis, I have to object to all these ideas. They're all terrible ideas, and you should all submit your best work to Opudis.
Well, we're now. Oh.
The deadline adds to you. I mean, you will submit now to which disk? The disk in October.
In a year from now.
Then that's ridiculous. You'll wait for PODC to February and present the paper in July. If you really believe in your paper. And if you don't really believe in your paper, or you submit to PPOP if you are doing multiprocessor algorithms, or you submit to whatever, I don't know what's that SODAC, if you are doing graph theory or graph algorithms.
It's not only belief. I need to have this belief in the rest of the community that nobody will be smart enough to get the same results.
Oh, but Hagit, I think that you're making the assumption that the actual presentation of the paper in the physical conference, that's what matters. But nowadays, all we need is, I mean, I can present my paper on my website or on Archive, and I can put the talk on YouTube, as we already do actually starting this year. And the conference itself, the physical meeting, you know, that's this is where we will have shorter presentations anyhow, and we'll just use it to meet each other and I don't know,
Have beer.
Yeah, have beer and dinner with each other or whatever, and collaborate, of course, and work and all that. It's not only beer, but the actual physical meeting to some extent loses its parts of its significance. Okay.
So I'm just, I want to drill down. You will have a deadline, say we will have another deadline, say in October or something. The decision will be made, say, by December, January. And the staff will wait to October 20, another year.
What do you mean by waiting? I mean, it's you publish it right away, right?
I could publish it on my website or on Archive whenever I want.
Yeah, exactly.
You publish it, you put it in your CV as accepted, you upload it to the video channel, to the official video channel of the conference, you upload the paper to the proceedings, and then you talk about it 6 months later and tell people about this wonderful result that you had 6 months ago.
Talk about it for 5 minutes, right? I mean,
5 minutes, yeah.
Now, following up on what Rotem just said, I mean, it seems like it will completely eliminate conferences like OPODIS. I mean, who would send to OPODIS? Now, if your paper was rejected from DISC,
OPODIS is the best food. How can you give up on OPODIS?
You could call OPODIS the DISC of the winter. And
we're going to call it the ITCS of distributed computing.
Unless the location is great.
Yeah, OPODIS is always too much fun to...
Yeah, I mean, the meeting could go on. There's no reason why it has to be associated with the acceptance.
Yeah, to some extent, Sirocco is a bit of a model for this, right? It's still going strong, even though the deadline is not far from PODC and DISC.
Which?
Sirocco.
Okay.
I mean, I can't speak for others, but I'm not buying that this would really affect APODIS so much, because if papers are strong enough, are we going to submit them to APODIS instead of PODC or DISC?
Of course, we are submitting to APODIS very strong papers, but
no, but sometimes it happens that you get the reviews and you say, okay, I see their point. What am I going to do now? Am I going to wait a whole year and roll the dice again? Or am I going to accept that they made good points and I'm going to submit to one of the smaller conferences?
So I do think that this shouldn't be set up in a way that it can be abused to, you know, keep submitting the same paper 8 times to PODC or DISC. But that's something we have to deal with anyways, I guess.
So should we call this verbal conversation about finished now? We're like 33 minutes over, or people want to keep talking?
So I would suggest to maybe briefly consider how we want to actually move to collect info on the subject and come to a meaningful decision at a later point.
I liked your idea about constituting a small committee who could be tasked with getting these maybe examples from other conferences, et cetera. Like there's been some good ideas, I think, in the chat. What do you think about that, Christoph?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's I'm happy with this suggestion. Yeah. That's why I made it. So does this mean we should constitute this now or via the chat?
I think we should constitute it via the chat. But in the, like, I mean, I don't mean like putting it off forever, but you know, it's,
So probably it's still a good idea to put at least someone in charge of doing this.
oh, okay. All right. Would you like to be the chair of the committee?
I guess I set myself up for this. So, I'm not sure whether I'm the best choice for this, but I can certainly give it a shot.
Okay, if you like, we can think about a co-chair if that would be good. But yeah, I would rather do this, I guess, like not right now while we're talking and some of the key players have already had to leave. Yeah. Okay, so thanks everybody for a really interesting business meeting, and you know, we'll copy all this stuff over to the Zulip chat. So I'll see you all tomorrow.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Jennifer?
Yeah.
Please don't forget to, well, stop the recording and send me the recording file later.
Yeah.
Use the same mechanism as, well, when was it? Yesterday, today? I'm not sure anymore.
It was this morning. I put it on a Dropbox for you. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Yes, and I'll copy the chat into the Zulip.
So thank you, Jennifer, for doing such a great job as the steering committee chair.
Thank you, Adid.
And see you tomorrow, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, great. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.